We continue Midday Sunday today with Dr. Jerry Turney. You're the senior biologist and you're involved in plant pathology as well?
I'm senior biologist, plant pathologist for the Los Angeles County Agricultural Commissioner.
Which means you're looking at this whole, was it 5,000 square mile area here of the Los Angeles County, whatever it may be?
Well, our mission is to prevent the introduction of exotic pests into California, and Los Angeles County has two of the main entry points for exotic pests into the state, the harbor and the airport.
Okay. But you're also, your office is also, or the Agriculture Commissioner's office is also responsible for weights and measures.
That's true.
That's another part of it. But what we want to talk about today is watering, irrigating, and lawns. That's the first thing that people are thinking about, right?
Well, lawns use a tremendous amount of water, more than any other element of a landscape. Typical lawn in Southern California will use 3 to 4 feet of water per year to keep it green.
And when we talk about feet of water, we're talking about cubic feet?
No. When you talk about irrigating landscapes or farms or plant material at all, you talk about it in inches, just the way you measure rainfall. So if it rained an inch, you would also, in the same vein, apply an inch of water to a field, or apply 2 inches or 3 inches or 4 inches.
But what about the area? That doesn't matter?
That doesn't come into play because if you have a lawn and you're irrigating it, you would typically apply about a ½ inch to your lawn. If you have sprinklers, you can put straight-sided cups on your lawn, such as coffee cups or a tuna can, run your system for 15 minutes, and then go measure the depth in all the cups. Typically, a pop-up lawn sprinkler system will apply at about 2 inches per hour. So in 15 minutes, you can expect to get about a ½ inch in the cups. The problem with that is that most soils will only absorb water at about a ½ inch an hour. So typically, these lawn sprinkler systems will start having runoff within 4 minutes of turning on the sprinklers.
Runoff onto the sidewalk?
Onto the sidewalk, down into the curb, and into the catch basins. So that's a tremendous loss of water. You're applying the irrigation water, and it's just running down the street. So not only is your lawn a big guzzler, you're just wasting it by having it spray all over the place. So anyway, you do want to know your application rate, because if you don't know your application rate, you don't know how long to run your sprinklers. Now there's a lot of newer technology, especially these rotating heads that have little fingers, and they'll apply at less than a ½ inch an hour.
Okay.
So
but
you can
is
avoid
½
the
an inch an hour, is that the ideal?
That would be okay.
Okay.
Because you're going to really reduce runoff with that. Of course, the goal for most people is to really reduce the total amount of water they use in their landscape, and to do that, you need to get rid of your lawn.
Is that an emotional thing for people, have you found?
I don't know why it would be. Some people are wedded to their lawns, they love their lawns, but you can have a beautiful garden, and a far more interesting garden, than just a block of green lawn.
Yeah.
And especially think of your front lawn. What do you really use it for? You walk by it in the morning on the way to work, you walk by it in the evening on the way home, and you really never utilize it to walk on it. I mean, the real advantage of a turf is that you can walk on it.
Yeah.
You can do stuff on it. You can play football on it. You can have a party on it, put out chairs and tables and entertain. But you don't do that in your front yard.
So instead of AstroTurf, which would be one alternative, you're talking about planting things like succulents and bushes and stuff like that?
Using drought-tolerant ground covers, shrubs, and low-water use trees to replace your lawn, and then you can dramatically decrease the amount of water you use in a landscape.
I've seen houses like that, and it's really quite eye-catching.
Well, you can have some beautiful plant materials, and far more interesting, really.
Sure, yeah, yeah.
I remember years ago talking to some nursery owners who tell me that they think Southern California has the most boring landscape they've ever seen in their lives because they're into specialty plant materials or really unique, interesting things. Yeah. So there's, a lot of the stuff that people are familiar with, ice plants, but there's also the succulents, just to name a few genera, crassula, sedum. Those are very, very drought tolerant. You would water them once a month, give them a good soak once a month, and you're good. If you take off on vacation for a week or two, or for even 4 weeks, you come back, your landscape will look just the way it did when the day you left.
And you're not only conserving water, but you're also lowering your water bill.
You're lowering your water bill. You don't have to have someone come every week and mow it.
Yeah.
You're not going to have that overspray and running off.
What about so many of us here in Southern California who have the facilities to do it? We've got an avocado tree, maybe a peach tree, maybe an orange tree. How should we be dealing with them during this?
Well, typically people don't understand how to water their fruit trees. They're going to water them like they water their lawn. And a big mistake is to put your fruit trees into a lawn and think you're watering it properly. So fruit trees are generally watered once a month in the spring and the fall, and every 2 to 3 weeks in the summer. And another way you can reduce the amount of water for your fruit trees or your vegetable garden is using a thick layer of compost or mulch. And you can also put down either brown paper, brown building paper, or cardboard, and then cover that with the mulch.
Oh, yeah.
And that will suppress all the weeds and conserve a lot of water. Because there's two ways you lose water from the landscape. One is water going into the roots, up through the shoots, and out into the air. The other is evaporation from the surface of the soil. And that's substantial. For instance, if you were to mulch tomatoes, you can reduce the water needed for your tomatoes by about 30% just by using mulch.
And when you talk about mulch, you're talking about what?
Compost, composted yard waste, or
which is something else that can be free.
The city of Los Angeles has 12 distribution centers where they give away free compost.
Yeah.
You just have to be able to move it.
Which can sometimes be a challenge. What about our camellias, our roses, that sort of stuff?
Well, you can do the same thing. You know, you can compost around them and reduce the evaporation from the surface of the soil. But what's really important is to understand the correct way to water them in the first place. A lot of people call me up and they're watering frequently, but for short run times during the week. They'll water 2 or 3 times a week for very brief run times.
What are we talking about? 2 or 3 minutes?
2 or 3 minutes, 5 minutes. They're only watering about a ½ an inch to an inch of soil. And that water mostly just evaporates. So if they water correctly, they'll have healthier plants and they'll use less water. So for shrubs, typically you're going to water maybe, well, every 2 weeks, depending on the shrub. I mean, some shrubs are very drought tolerant, like rosemary. You can water it once a month. Roses, I'd probably water them about every 2 weeks in the spring and the fall, and once a week in the summer. But that would be for a hot inland valley. If you're right along the coast, you could probably water your roses every 10 to 14 days, even in the summer months.
Doctor, we're almost out of time. Let me quickly, though, ask you, what about vegetables?
Well, vegetables actually are fairly high water use, comparable to a lawn. But again, if you mulch, you can reduce the water use for vegetables by about 30% with a thick layer of compost around your plants.
And would that apply to strawberries as well?
Yes, really any material, any vegetable type. You know, tomatoes, peppers, squash, beans, strawberries. They are high water use, comparable to something like cactus or succulents, and they're almost really on a par with a lawn. But you're not going to have 1,000 square feet of vegetable garden, where it's quite common to have 1,000 square feet of turf.
So you could give up the turf, and you can still keep your trees and your bushes and all the rest of that stuff.
And if you give up your turf, you'll dramatically reduce your water use on a monthly basis or annual basis, and you'll have plenty of water left over for your camellias that might be on the north side of your house, 1 or 2. You don't want to surround your house with camellias. And you'll have plenty of room for a handful of tomatoes. And 3 or 4 tomatoes will usually be plenty for most households.
Wonderful. Thank you, Doctor. Stay with us. We'll be right back.